The distant edges of the Averan galaxy glimmered with a cold, unearthly light. This far-flung region, avoided by most interstellar empires and alliances due to its harsh environment and scarce resources, had become home to the solar species. Beings with iridescent skin that reflected starlight in mesmerizing patterns and elongated limbs that moved with graceful efficiency in low-gravity environments. Commander Lucien Carndle stood at the observation deck of Outpost Zenith, his translucent dermal layers pulsing with concern as he studied the long-range sensor readouts. The patterns were unmistakable, though he wished they weren't. Commander Ira Mellon, his second-in-command, approached with a data tablet. Her movements were quick, betraying her anxiety despite her professional demeanor. The anomaly has been confirmed. It's not background radiation or sensor malfunction. Lucien's four-fingered hand traced the trajectory lines on the holographic display. How many vessels are we looking at? At least 300 capital ships, possibly more, Ira replied, her voice dropping. The energy signatures match Vector weaponry. Their fleet is massive, much larger than anything they've deployed in the last decade. Lucien felt a chill ripple through his specialized temperature-regulating skin. The Vector Empire was known throughout several star systems as ruthless conquerors. Their path of destruction had left dozens of civilizations subjugated or exterminated entirely. If they had set their sights on the solar frontier. "Have you alerted Central Command?" Lucien asked, still staring at the ominous formation slowly making its way toward their sector. "Yes, but reinforcements would take weeks to arrive. We're too far from any major solar stronghold." Ira hesitated before adding, "I've been researching possible allies in nearby sectors. I found something unusual in the ancient archives." She pulled up a faded text document on her tablet. There are references to an alliance called Humanity or Humans. They haven't been seen in these parts for centuries, perhaps longer, but the archives suggest they once maintained outposts throughout this region. "What happened to them?" Lucien asked. "Unknown. They simply disappeared." But the archives mention a peculiar pattern, extremely low-band interstellar signals, and... She paused. "Just one ship." "One ship?" Lucien shrugged dismissively. "What good would a single vessel do against a Vector armada? They deploy hundreds of warships for even minor conquests." Ira's expression remained serious. The archives are specific about this point. They always sent just one ship. Before Lucien could respond, an urgent communication alert flashed across his console. Within minutes, the command staff gathered in the strategic planning chamber, faces grave as they discussed options that seemed increasingly limited. General Velos, the highest-ranking military officer at the outpost, summarized their situation bluntly. "The Vector fleet will reach our defensive perimeter in 7 standard days. Our shield generators cannot withstand a sustained assault of that magnitude. Evacuation is impossible given our civilian population size." "What about calling for help?" suggested Major Varen. "The Crescent Alliance? The Meridian Collective?" "Too distant," General Velos replied. "Even at maximum warp, they couldn't reach us for at least 15 days. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems. Then, Lieutenant Sorrell, the communications specialist, burst into the room, his skin fluctuating with excitement. "Commanders, we've received a response to our distress call." "From whom?" General Velos demanded. "It's not from any of our known allies," Sorrell replied, confusion evident in his voice. "The signal uses an ancient communication protocol. They identify themselves as humans." A murmur rippled through the assembled officers. Legends and stories, nothing more. That's what most Solar believed about humans. "What do they say?" Lucien asked, suddenly alert. Sorrell looked up from his datapad, his expression a mixture of hope and disbelief. "They say they're sending a ship." "A fleet?" General Velos pressed. "No, sir," Sorrell replied. "Just one ship." The tension in the room thickened. Ira exchanged a worried glance with Lucien. The Vector Armada was approaching with enough firepower to level their entire colony. And the mysterious humans, if they even existed, we're sending just one vessel. It seemed less like salvation and more like a cruel joke. Lord Sovereign stood on the command bridge of the Vactor flagship Eternal Dominion, his tall, armor-clad figure casting a long shadow across the polished obsidian floor. The view screen displayed the approaching Solder territory, a pathetic collection of outposts and colonies clinging to the edge of the Averin galaxy. Primitive, he muttered, his voice distorted by the ceremonial battle mask that concealed his features. They have no concept of the glory they will soon serve. Admiral Kresh, his chief military advisor, bowed deeply before speaking. My lord, our scouts report minimal defensive capabilities. Their main settlement has a standard planetary shield, but nothing that could withstand our destroyer squadron for more than a few hours. Excellent, Sovereign replied, his fingers tracing the ornate engravings on his command throne. This sector will serve as an ideal staging ground for our expansion deeper into the galaxy. The Solder possess useful genetic traits that will benefit our bioengineering division. The massive Vactor fleet moved with practiced precision, hundreds of obsidian black warships arranged in perfect formation. Each destroyer was equipped with ion core light drives, quantum-tipped missiles, and gravitational disruption cannons. Their flagship, the Eternal Dominion, dwarfed even these impressive vessels, its hull adorned with the trophies of conquered worlds. Back on the Solder outpost, Lucian and Ira worked tirelessly to prepare their meager defenses. Civilian evacuation protocols were initiated, though everyone knew there weren't enough ships to save more than a fraction of the population. Any update on a human vessel? Lucian asked as he reviewed defensive positions with his security team. Ira shook her head. Our long-range sensors haven't detected anything matching the signal's origin coordinates. Either they haven't departed yet, or they were never coming. Lucian finished grimly. We need to prepare for the worst. The Solder High Council convened an emergency session with Lucian and Ira in attendance. The debate was heated but ultimately futile. Their options were limited to surrender or a doomed resistance. As the council meeting adjourned, a communications officer rushed in. Commander, the Vactor fleet has halted at the edge of our system. They're transmitting a message. The holographic projector flickered to life, displaying the imposing figure of Lord Sovereign. His voice boomed through the chamber with calculated menace. People of the Solder colonies, your existence has been deemed worthy of serving the Vactor Empire. Surrender your worlds and submit to our authority, and you may continue to exist as subjects of our glorious dominion. Resist, and you'll be eradicated. You have 2 planetary rotations to respond. Your future depends on your wisdom. The transmission ended, leaving a suffocating silence in its wake. We need more time, General Delos said finally. If there's even a chance these humans might assist us, I'll draft a response, Lucian volunteered. A request for additional time to consider their generous offer. Perhaps we can delay them for another day or 2. Do you think the Vactor will agree? Ira asked skeptically. They enjoy the theater of conquest almost as much as conquest itself, Lucian replied. Lord Sovereign will likely appreciate the opportunity to savor our apparent fear. Their gambit worked barely. The Vactor granted them 1 additional rotation period to contemplate the inevitable. But as the deadline approached, hope dwindled among the Solder leadership. Then, barely hours before the Vactor's ultimatum expired, the sensor array detected something new. Commander, Lieutenant Sorrel called out. We're tracking an unidentified vessel entering the system. Lucian and Ira rushed to the command center, where a holographic representation of their star system displayed a single ship approaching at remarkable speed. Is it them? The humans? Lucian asked. The vessel is broadcasting on the same frequency as the earlier communication, Sorrel confirmed. They identify as the HSS Odyssey. Ira studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. That can't be right. The vessel it's barely the size of a mid-class cruiser. It's smaller than even our defense frigates. The news spread quickly throughout the Solder colony. A single ship, not a massive warship, not a dreadnought, but a modest-sized vessel, had arrived to face the Vactor Armada. The Vector fleet is responding, Sorrel reported. They're adjusting formation, moving to intercept the human vessel. They must think it's a scout, General Velos remarked. They don't realize it's the entire human response. The HSS Odyssey slowed as it approached Solder space, transmitting a request to dock at the main station. Against the backdrop of hundreds of Vector warships repositioning themselves, the lone human vessel seemed absurdly, tragically inadequate. Lucien led the reception committee personally, curiosity overcoming his growing sense of doom. The airlock cycled, and for the first time in recorded Solder history, humans stood before them. Captain Alira Hayes led a small delegation of 5 officers. They were bipedal, like the Solder, but with opaque skin in various shades of brown and pink. Their uniforms were simple but elegant, dark blue with silver accents, bearing insignias Lucien couldn't recognize. Commander Carnal, Captain Hayes greeted him, extending a hand in what he assumed was a cultural greeting gesture. On behalf of humanity, we accept your request for assistance. Lucien reciprocated the gesture awkwardly, then gestured toward the view screen showing the Vector fleet. Captain Hayes, we are grateful for your response, but forgive my directness. You brought only one ship against hundreds. A slight smile crossed Hayes' face. Yes, one ship is what we deemed appropriate for this situation. But the Vector fleet, Ira began, is substantial, Hayes acknowledged. But numbers aren't everything in interstellar conflict. History has taught us that lesson many times. The casual confidence in her voice was either the height of delusion or suggested a knowledge of warfare beyond anything the Solder had encountered. Either way, Lucien couldn't decide if he should be intrigued or terrified. The Vector have given us until tomorrow to surrender, he explained. After that, they begin their assault. Captain Hayes nodded, seemingly unconcerned. Then we have time to discuss strategy. Shall we? The strategic conference room felt unusually small with the human delegation present. Captain Hayes studied the holographic display of the Vector fleet formations with analytical precision, occasionally asking questions about their typical attack patterns and weapons capabilities. Why only one ship? Lucien finally asked directly. If humanity wishes to help, why not send a fleet of your own? Hayes looked up from the display, her expression thoughtful. Commander, humanity has existed for a very long time. We've fought countless wars, some that nearly destroyed us, others that nearly destroyed entire star systems. We learned that overwhelming force often creates more problems than it solves. But surely against the Vector, Ira began. One ship is enough, Hayes stated simply. The Odyssey was designed specifically for situations like this. Before anyone could press further, an alarm blared throughout the station. Lieutenant Sorrel's voice came over the communication system. Commander, the Vector have launched an attack on our outer defense platform. They're not waiting for their deadline. Sure enough, a squadron of Vector destroyers had broken formation and was advancing on one of the Solder defense satellites. It's a test, Hayes observed calmly. They're probing your defenses, gauging your response capabilities. We need to deploy our interceptors, General Velos declared. No, Hayes countered. Allow us to handle this first engagement. Before the Solder officers could object, Hayes contacted her ship. Lieutenant Commander Wallace, execute pattern Epsilon. Focus on the lead destroyer only. On the tactical display, they watched as the HSS Odyssey accelerated toward the attacking Vector squadron. The Solder officers held their breath, expecting to witness the immediate destruction of the human vessel. Instead, the Odyssey performed a series of maneuvers that defied conventional space physics. It seemed to bend its trajectory in ways that should have been impossible, evading Vector weapons fire with apparent ease. What are we seeing? General Velos demanded. Those movement patterns violate standard navigational physics. Localized gravitational manipulation, Hayes explained casually. A basic defensive measure. As they watched, the Odyssey positioned itself between the Vector squadron and the Solder defense platform. The Vector ships opened fire with their primary weapons, and something extraordinary happened. The energy beams and projectiles curved around the human vessel, some even reversing direction entirely to strike the very ships that had fired them. Two Vector destroyers erupted in flames as their own weaponry turned against them. "Impossible," whispered Ira, her skin pulsing with shock. "Gravitational lens array," Hayes explained. "We bend space locally to redirect energy and matter. Quite efficient against opponents who rely on brute force." The remaining Vector ships hastily retreated to their main fleet. On the tactical display, the massive Vector formation seemed to ripple as if in agitation. "You've angered them," Lucian observed. "Good," replied Hayes. "Anger leads to mistakes." While the Soldier command staff continued to coordinate their defensive preparations, Ira slipped away to a private terminal. Her curiosity about these humans had overcome her usual caution. Using her security clearance, she accessed the station's sensor arrays, focusing them on the HSS Odyssey. What she found defied explanation. The energy readings from the human vessel fluctuated in patterns unlike anything in the Soldier database. At its core pulsed something that resembled a contained quantum singularity, a power source that should have been theoretically impossible to maintain on a vessel of that size. When she rejoined the others, Hayes gave her a knowing look. "Found anything interesting, Commander Mellon?" Ira hesitated before responding. "Your ship's power source. It's unlike anything we've encountered." Hayes smiled slightly. "We've had a very long time to perfect our technology. Humanity's history stretches back further than most realize." "How far?" Lucian asked. Before Hayes could answer, the tactical alert sounded again. This time, it was no probe. The main Vector fleet was mobilizing for a full-scale assault. Lord Sovereign's furious voice boomed through the communication channels. "This is your final warning, Soldier worms. Surrender now, or be annihilated." And to the pathetic humans who dare to interfere, your single ship is an insult to the might of the Vector Empire. You will be crushed beneath our heel. Captain Hayes listened to the tirade with an expression that bordered on amusement. When it ended, she turned to Lucian. "It seems diplomacy has failed. Shall we proceed to more direct methods of communication?" On board the Vector flagship, Lord Sovereign raged at his commanders. "One ship. They mock us with one ship." Admiral Kresh approached cautiously. "My lord, the vessel employs technology we have not encountered before. Perhaps we should analyze their capabilities further before." "They are nothing," Sovereign bellowed. "A single vessel, regardless of its technology, cannot stand against our armada. Deploy all squadrons. I want that human ship destroyed and the Soldier colony in flames by day's end." Not all of his officers shared his confidence. Commander Vetries, a veteran of 100 campaigns, spoke quietly to his fellow officers when Sovereign was out of earshot. "Did you see what they did to Alpha Squadron? Their own weapons turn against them. I've never seen such technology. One lucky maneuver against a small squadron doesn't mean they can withstand our full might," countered Commander Drex. "The human ship will be destroyed within minutes of our main assault." Vetries wasn't convinced. There are stories, ancient ones, about encounters with humans in the distant past. They speak of devastation on an unimaginable scale. Entire fleets lost to single engagements. Superstition and fear, Drex dismissed. "Prepare your ships for glory." The Vector assault began with overwhelming force. Hundreds of warships advanced in perfect formation, their weapon systems charging with ominous energy signatures. Missiles and fighter squadrons launched in coordinated waves designed to overwhelm any defensive system. On the Soldier command station, tension had reached an unbearable level. Captain Hayes remained calm as she coordinated with her ship, issuing orders in a measured tone that belied the gravity of their situation. "Commander Carndall," she addressed Lucian, "your defense platform should focus on protecting your civilian centers. The Odyssey will engage the main Vector fleet." "That's suicide," General Delos objected. "Even with your technology, you cannot possibly withstand their combined firepower." Hayes nodded in acknowledgement. "You're not wrong, General. The Odyssey has limitations. Our gravitational manipulation systems require enormous energy, and sustained use against a fleet this size will strain our resources. Then why? Lucian began. Because sometimes, Commander, the only way to win is to be willing to lose. Hayes turned to her communications officer. Connect me to the ship. Tell Commander Wallace to prepare the gravimetric disruptor. Ira's eyes widened. What? It's a weapon of last resort, Hayes explained. It creates a localized distortion in space-time, essentially a controlled gravitational singularity. It will disable or destroy a significant portion of the Vector fleet. And the side effects? Lucian asked, sensing there was more. Hayes hesitated. The singularity is difficult to control completely. There's a risk it could expand beyond our target zone, affecting solar space as well, Ira concluded. Yes, and the Odyssey would almost certainly be caught in the effect. Hayes met their gaze steadily. This is why we send one ship, Commander, to minimize casualties if the worst should happen. The revelation sent a chill through the solar officers. These humans weren't just confident. They were prepared for self-sacrifice on a scale that seemed incomprehensible. There must be another way, Lucian insisted. I'm open to suggestions, Hayes replied. But we have minutes, not hours, to decide. As they debated, the tactical display showed the Odyssey moving to intercept the Vector Vanguard. The human vessel's defensive systems were performing admirably, redirecting enemy fire and creating gravitational eddies that disrupted Vector formations. But the sheer number of attackers was overwhelming, and sensor readings showed the Odyssey's energy. Signature fluctuating under the strain. Captain, Hayes' first officer reported from the ship, shield integrity at 62% and dropping. Gravitational array operating at maximum capacity. We cannot maintain this defensive posture for more than 17 minutes. Hayes acknowledged the report grimly. Prepare the disruptor. Target coordinates to follow. Lucian exchanged a look with Ira, then made a decision. Captain Hayes, if you're going to deploy this weapon, allow us to help. Our fighters can create a diversion. Draw some of the Vector fire away from your vessel. That would put your people at extreme risk, Hayes warned, as opposed to the certain destruction we face if you fail. Lucian countered. We prefer taking action to waiting for death. For the first time, Hayes smiled genuinely. A sentiment humanity understands well. Very well, Commander. Let's coordinate our efforts. While the Solver prepared their fighter squadrons, Hayes shared something of humanity's history with Lucian and Ira. Thousands of years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves with our own technology. Multiple times, actually, we developed weapons that could lay waste to entire planets before we truly understood the responsibility such power entailed. What changed? Ira asked. We did, through painful lessons and near-extinction events. Hayes looked out at the stars beyond the station viewport. We realized that the greatest power isn't in destruction, but in precision, in restraint, in knowing exactly how much force to apply and when to withhold it. So you limited yourselves to one ship, Lucian said, understanding dawning. For interventions like this, yes. One ship with our best technology and our most experienced crew. Enough to make a difference without risking catastrophic escalation. She turned back to them. It doesn't always work. Sometimes we fail. But the alternative, unleashing our full military capabilities, has proven far more dangerous in the long run. The conversation was interrupted by a tactical alert. On the main display, they could see the Vector flagship moving into position, surrounded by its elite guard vessels. They're preparing their primary weapon, Ira reported, analyzing the energy readings. Some kind of spatial disruptor. If it hits our main colony. Hayes studied the display intently. That's our target. Commander Carndall, launch your fighters now. Draw off their screening vessels. We need a clear shot at their flagship. The battle that followed would be remembered in solar history for generations. Their fighter squadrons, though hopelessly outmatched in firepower, executed brilliant evasive maneuvers that confused and divided the Vector fleet. For every Soldier fighter lost, they managed to disrupt multiple enemy vessels, creating gaps in the seemingly impenetrable Vector formation. The HSS Odyssey used these openings masterfully, its gravitational technology creating chaos in the enemy ranks. Vector ships collided with each other as space itself seemed to fold and twist around them. Weapon beams curved back upon their sources, and missile salvos detonated prematurely as their trajectories were altered by invisible forces. Yet despite these successes, the overwhelming numbers of the Vector fleet began to tell. The Odyssey's energy signatures weakened with each passing minute, and Soldier fighters were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. On the Vector flagship, Lord Sovereign watched with growing rage as his perfect formation disintegrated into disorder. Enough games! Charge the Void Reaver cannon. Target their main colony. Let them watch their home burn before we destroy them. The massive weapon began to power up, drawing energy from the flagship's core. A sinister glow built at the front of the vessel, distorting the very fabric of space around it. Hayes recognized the threat immediately. They're targeting your colony directly. We're out of time. She opened a channel to her ship. Commander Wallace, deploy the gravimetric disruptor. Full power. Captain, Wallace responded, his voice tense. At full power, we won't be able to contain the singularity for more than a few seconds. The Odyssey will be caught in the effect. Understood. Execute. Lucian stepped forward. Captain Hayes. It's been an honor, Commander Carndall. Hayes interrupted, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. I hope we've lived up to the legends. Before Lucian could respond, the tactical display showed a new energy signature emanating from the Odyssey. It began as a pinpoint of intense light, then expanded into a swirling vortex of gravitational energy. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Vector fleet. Ships closest to the phenomenon were torn apart instantly, their hulls crumpling like paper as space-time warped around them. Others were pulled into collision courses with each other, creating a chain reaction of destruction that rippled through their formation. The flagship itself began to list as the gravitational forces disrupted its massive engines. But the Odyssey was not spared. The human vessel shuddered as the forces of its own weapon began to affect its structure. Its shields flared and collapsed, and sections of the hull began to buckle under the strain. Their core is going critical, Ira reported, her voice breaking. They can't contain it. Lucian made a split-second decision. All remaining fighters converge on the human vessel. Tractor beams at maximum. Try to pull them out of the singularity's range. It seemed futile. The gravitational forces were far beyond the capacity of the small Soldier craft to overcome. But they tried regardless, their tractor beams straining against the pull of the collapsing singularity. Then something unexpected happened. The Odyssey's course signature changed, pulsing in a pattern that seemed to counteract the gravitational effect. The singularity began to shrink, collapsing in on itself until it vanished in a final flash of energy. In its wake, the Vector fleet lay in ruins. The flagship Eternal Dominion drifted powerless, its fearsome cannon destroyed along with most of its command structure. Hundreds of other vessels were damaged or destroyed entirely. The HSS Odyssey had not escaped unscathed. The once elegant vessel was now barely recognizable, its hull torn and twisted by the forces it had unleashed. Life support systems flickered weakly, and its main engines were completely offline. Life signs, Lucian demanded. Ira checked the readings. Faint but present. Their emergency systems must be operating. Get a rescue team to that ship immediately, Lucian ordered. Medical personnel, engineering support, everyone we can spare. The aftermath was chaotic but hopeful. Soldier rescue teams managed to evacuate most of the Odyssey's crew, including Commander Wallace, though many were badly injured. Captain Hayes was found in the ship's core chamber, where she had apparently gone to manually stabilize the singularity collapse. The remnants of the Vector fleet retreated in disarray. Lord Sovereign was among the casualties, his command bridge having been directly exposed to the gravitational singularity. Without his leadership, the surviving Vector commanders chose to withdraw rather than continue a now pointless conquest. As the Soldier began the process of treating the wounded and assessing the damage, Lucian visited Captain Hayes in the medical facility. She was conscious but weakened, her uniform replaced by medical garments. "Commander Carndall," she greeted him, her voice hoarse. "It seems your medical technology is quite compatible with human physiology. We adapted some protocols based on your ship's medical database," he explained. "Your crew provided access before they were evacuated." Hayes nodded approvingly. "Good. Cooperation is a positive sign." She attempted to sit up, wincing with the effort. "The Vactor? Retreating. Their command structure is in chaos, and their flagship is disabled. We don't anticipate further aggression from them in the near future." "And your people? Your colony? Damaged but intact. Thanks to you." Lucian sat beside her bed. "You were going to explain earlier about humanity's history, why you intervene the way you do." Hayes smiled faintly. "We are an old species, Commander. Older than most realize. We've spent thousands of years fighting wars, developing technologies, making mistakes, and trying to learn from them. And the one-ship policy? After particularly devastating conflicts, we realized that overwhelming military presence often creates escalation rather than resolution. We developed ships like the Odyssey, vessels with extraordinary capabilities but limited deployment. It forces us to be precise, to think beyond brute force." "It seems like a significant risk," Lucian observed. "All meaningful actions carry risk. But we found that sending a single vessel, representing our best technology and our willingness to stand with those in need, often achieves more than an entire fleet could." She paused. "And when things go wrong, the damage is contained." Ira joined them, carrying a small device. "Captain Hayes, the engineering team has salvaged what they could from the Odyssey. I'm afraid the damage is extensive. The core is beyond repair with our current technology." Hayes accepted this news with remarkable composure. "The ship served its purpose. We can request a retrieval vessel from human space." "That won't be necessary," Ira replied. "Our council has voted unanimously to assist with repairs. It may take time, and we may need guidance with certain systems, but we consider it the least we can do." She placed the device in Hayes' hand. "This is a Solver signal beacon. It's configured to our emergency frequencies across all our colonies and outposts." Her expression grew solemn. "So you'll know if we need you again, and so you'll know you don't fight alone." Hayes studied the device, then carefully set it aside. "Thank you, Commander Mellon. I believe this marks the beginning of a valuable alliance." In the days that followed, the Solver began the long process of rebuilding their damaged outposts and tending to their wounded. The human crew integrated surprisingly well, sharing knowledge and assisting with repairs while their own vessel underwent reconstruction. One evening, Lucian found himself on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The HSS Odyssey, or what remained of it, was visible in the distance, surrounded by Solver engineering vessels. Despite its battered appearance, there was something profoundly inspiring about the human ship. "Still trying to make sense of it all?" Ira asked, joining him at the viewport. "Just one ship," Lucian mused. "Why did humans send just one ship against an entire armada? It seems impossible that they could have known it would be enough." "Perhaps they didn't," Ira suggested. "Perhaps they simply knew it was all they should send." Lucian nodded slowly. "Hayes told me something before she returned to oversee the Odyssey's repairs. She said that humanity learned long ago that their greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or their technology, but in their willingness to stand against overwhelming odds when necessary." "A philosophy worth considering," Ira agreed. She also promised that if we ever needed them again, they would return. Lucian turned from the viewport, not with a fleet, not with an armada, but with exactly what was needed. No more, no less. As they left the observation deck, the damaged human vessel caught the light of the distant star, its broken hull gleaming like a promise against the darkness of space. Just one ship, but sometimes one was enough. The Odyssey would eventually depart for deep space, carrying with it the beginnings of a formal alliance between humanity and the Solver people. And throughout the Averin galaxy, whispers spread of the battle, of how a single human vessel had defeated a Vactor armada, and of the ancient species that intervened not with overwhelming force, but with precisely what was needed. Just one ship, It was all they sent. It was all they needed to send.